Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Thanks for joining us. Today we're talking about something near and dear to many of our hearts, and that is how to get a good night's rest night after night. And we're talking today with Dr. Aric Prather, who runs one of the most successful sleep clinics in the world and is the author of the book, The Sleep Prescription: 7 Days to Unlocking Your Best Rest. Dr. Prather, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, so good to be here. Thank you.
So this I found fascinating because you just offer very practical tips about how to get a good night's sleep night after night. And as a medical reporter, I thought I knew many of these, and you surprised me. There were some real good ones in here. But before we get into the actual tips, talk about why sleep is so important, because so many people don't get enough sleep and think that's some sort of a badge of honor, like, oh, I only get 4 hours a night, or, oh, I only get 6 hours a night. Look how hard I work. Look how productive I am. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an uphill battle, at least in our culture, our busy culture, about kind of investing in sleep and recognizing that when people sleep better, kind of they're able to do more things during the day, right? I mean, we know from all of the sleep research that when people get the sleep they need, kind of they're more productive, they're more creative, they are better partners, they're better parents, they're more empathetic, and their health is much better off, both our mental health as well as our physical health. And so, it's really trying to kind of shift the mindset around not only sleep not being kind of the last thing you do on your list at the end of the day, but actually an investment, right? That there's a big return on investing in our sleep. I mean, sleep does lots of things during the night that are critical for health. I mean, it impacts our metabolism, our immune system, our ability for our brain to kind of clear out all of the kind of metabolites that have kind of built up across the day. But, just what it does for us at the restoration, our ability to kind of have that emotional coping, that capital to be able to kind of deal with the slings and arrows of our day-to-day lives is just so critical and often kind of unappreciated. So we're really trying to shift that.
And also, this is a big reason for me, and I've noticed it in my own life, is if you don't get enough sleep, it often tends to lead to weight gain. I notice for me, when I don't get enough sleep, I crave those things that I shouldn't be eating, the high sugar, the processed foods, things like that, because doesn't it, not getting enough sleep, raise your cortisol levels, which makes you tend to eat junk food more?
Yeah, there's a number of things that happen under sleep loss that are related to appetite and metabolism. So, we know from kind of experimental studies where they bring people to the lab and keep them awake all night that, an aspect of their brain, our reward system, seems to be on overdrive, and kind of the angel on our shoulder who tells us, oh, no, like, don't have that extra piece of pizza. They're kind of, asleep at the wheel, so to speak. And so, people have kind of this drive towards high fat, high sugar foods. Obviously when you're awake longer, kind of you're metabolically active. And so that is related to more hunger, kind of in part because you're just awake longer. But also, even when we account for that, we see this upregulation in satiety hormones that are related to hunger, and kind of a downregulation of hormones that are important for telling us that we're full. And so all of those things together kind of can lead to this increase in consumption of food, but also how it changes our metabolism. So we know that from people that have, undergo this sleep loss, their insulin signaling is dysregulated. And so, it does push us towards kind of that obesogenic, kind of diabetic, area. And over time, it seems to be associated with increased weight gain for individuals and changes in their metabolism that kind of put us on a path towards a lot of age-related conditions.
So people probably ask you all the time, okay, how much sleep should I be getting? What's the answer?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is one that I get pretty often. All of us sleep folks get a lot. I think the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the Sleep Research Society have come out with guidelines for kind of how much sleep people should get. And in general, based on kind of all this like population level data, it's at least 7 hours to maintain optimal health for an adult. And this is for ages 18 to 65. That's where we have kind of these recommendations. After that, it's a little less clear as we get older because, as people age, they often get less sleep, and it's not clear if it's about sleep need or just part of the aging process. And so the recommendations aren't as strong. But I think a really important thing, and this is where kind of insomnia can really rear its ugly head, is this kind of tied to a number that you need to meet it, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen to you. And it's kind of like, going to a shoe store and, you wear a size 7, but all they have is size 8s, right? And so it's not a one size fits all. We're learning more about kind of the genetics of sleep and sleep need, but it's really about how you're feeling during the day. I mean, are you sleepy during the day? Do you feel restored? And it's likely that people are in this kind of 7 to 9 hour range, but, and on the shorter end, like when we get less than 5 hours, that is certainly kind of a risk factor for lots of negative health outcomes. But, I do worry that people get really tied to this kind of metric, and it can cause a lot of anxiety. And unfortunately, that anxiety about how much sleep you need can often kind of drive the experience of insomnia night after night. And so that's what we really want to avoid.
Wow, this is so practical. Well, let's get to these tips. They are fantastic. The first one I thought was extremely practical, which is sort of settle down towards the end of the day, turn off the news, turn off the social media, things that get you upset, and start calming yourself down 2 hours before bedtime. Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, I mean, I think what that really underscores is the importance for ensuring a transition. Oftentimes people treat themselves like they're computers, that you can just kind of flip the off switch and then kind of go to sleep. And that's just not how the body works. And so it's just really important to kind of have that marked transition time where you can really calm down, do something for yourself, kind of unplug from your work, unplug from kind of all the bad news. I mean, probably keep CBN on, that probably is okay. But otherwise, you want to make sure that you have this time to kind of increase what's called your kind of parasympathetic nervous system, this kind of rest and digest relaxation system that we know is really critical for bringing on sleep onset, and just allowing your body to do what it's really built to do, which is to sleep. And kind of remove any of these other things that keep your brain really engaged. That's where kind of social media can be really challenging, right? People love doing it, but it's built to keep you coming back, right? The reward that it gives you, the engagement that it gives you is really incompatible with sleeping. And so, ensuring that you do things that are calming for you, and ideally something positive, something that you like, kind of this low arousal, high, positive emotion that, we know puts people in the right situation to allow themselves to sleep.
And so you say you don't have to stop looking at a screen, that TV is okay, but maybe choose something light that doesn't get you upset, like, a sitcom or something like that.
Yeah.
That the point is to relax and have your emotions calm down for a really good amount of time before bed. And reading, of course, a great idea as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one important thing that you brought up there was around screens, right? And so there's a lot of talk about blue light that can, impact your circadian system, kind of shut down that melatonin that your brain makes, that kind of really sets the table for sleep. And that is a true thing. There is evidence to suggest that that's important. And so luckily, a lot of our devices have night shift filters that can kind of filter out that light exposure. But I think so much more important than that is the content in which people engage in, right? Certainly some people are really sensitive to blue light, but if you have the shift filter on and you're binging a Netflix series that you couldn't wait to do, it's a high likelihood that you're going to still stay awake, even with that night shift filter on. And so it's really about, I always say that, television is fine, but what I find in our clinic here at UCSF is that people do well when they watch things that they've already seen before,
Yes.
right? Things that they find really kind of enjoyable and humorous, but they don't need to know what happens because they know they've seen it, right? And so that seems to be really well. And for me, reading, right, just a couple pages and I'm out. So, But, I come across these bookworms that, they are voraciously consuming books. And in my experience, I've found that, that probably isn't the best strategy for them, right? So
Right.
it's a little bit personal in what is calming.
Right. You don't want to you don't want to start reading a thriller, a real page turner that you can't put down. You're up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You have to find out what happens. All
That's
right. We're
right.
going to take a quick break and be right back with Dr. Aric Prather. The book is called The Sleep Prescription. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we are discussing how to get a good night's sleep with Dr. Aric Prather, author of the book, The Sleep Prescription. And Dr. Prather, you said one way to get a good night's sleep all the time is to have the same wake-up time every morning. This was new to me. Can you explain it?
Yeah. So, I think one thing that's really important is that our bodies crave predictability. Like things just are more efficient when things are predictable. But also, one of the key pieces that regulates our sleep is our circadian clock. This is our kind of internal clock. And so one way to keep that time is to maintain a stable wake time. And so if you kind of maintain that wake time every day, you go throughout the day, you use the same kind of energy day to day, typically, you'll begin to feel sleepy around the same time each night. But I focus on the wake time because we can control that. We can control when we wake up, but we can't control when we fall asleep, right? Like sleep is not something that we make happen. Sleep comes to us. It kind of washes over us. And so it's really important, especially for people who have sleep problems, to take the pressure off, right? It's like you don't need to be in bed and sleep at a certain time. You want to kind of listen for those sleepiness cues, but keeping a stable wake time can really help with that. Also, one of the things that happens with insomnia is that people try to kind of adjust their wake time based on how their night was, right? So like they have a bad night of sleep and they'll sleep in an extra 2 hours. But what that does is it kind of throws the whole system off. It actually kind of puts you in jet lag without having any of the benefits of traveling, right? Like all the good things you get to see, you don't get to see them. You're stuck in your same place, but now your body is off in time. And so maintaining a stable wake time 7 days a week is really helpful to kind of get that process going. I usually get some negative feedback on this, and people who don't have a lot of sleep problems because they like to sleep in on the weekend, and that's okay. I'm not the fun police. I'm saying if you have sleep problems, this is the first place that you can start, that you can try to control this problem and kind of set your body clock, which will be really helpful in the other aspects that we can layer on related to improving your sleep.
So the next one, again, I had never heard this, but it makes perfect sense. And that is if you find yourself having a restless night, you're tossing and turning, don't stay in bed. Get up out of bed. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really critical one for treating people that have kind of chronic insomnia problems. What happens is that, people wake up in the middle of the night, or they get in bed and they can't sleep, and they just kind of distress, toss and turn, spend a lot of time there. And that really fractures your relationship with your bed. It turns out that your bed is such a critical environmental trigger for sleep. It kind of tells your body, it cues your body to kind of let go and be able to sleep, right? But when you spend a lot of time in bed, your body gets confused. And in fact, it creates something called a conditioned arousal, which means like when you're in bed, you actually become more alert. So commonly in my clinic, people will say things like, hey, I was feeling really sleepy. Then I got in bed and my brain woke up. And that is just great evidence of a conditioned arousal. And so the only way to fix that is to kind of break that cycle and repair the relationship of sleepiness with the bed. So, you have your angstiness and your bed, and you need to break those apart and wait until you get sleepy again. So you don't want to turn on all the lights. You don't want to do anything really active. You want to go back to those relaxing things that are known to kind of bring on that sleepiness for you. And when you begin to feel sleepy again, you kind of repair that relationship so that, over time, when you get back in bed, the bed does what it's supposed to do, is cue you to fall asleep. And so, that is really this conditioned arousal is often at kind of foundational in the development and progression of insomnia. And the only way that we can kind of, mitigate this problem is to kind of create an environment that is that helps facilitate sleepiness and sleep.
So your brain needs to associate being in the bed with sleeping. So you shouldn't really do things in the bed like work. I remember during the shutdown, I used to work in my
Yeah.
bed with my computer, and it hurt my neck. And other
Yeah.
things too. You really shouldn't. You really should just use the bed for sleep, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, we kind of think of it as making it a shrine to sleep, right? So we say sleep and sex. Those are like the things that happen there. Otherwise, it's really about, everything else should be outside of the bed. Luckily, we're kind of built for this. Like, ask any parent, you're built to go on poor sleep for like an extended period of time. But, there are things that we can do, and certainly keeping the bed as a sacred place for sleep and is critical.
Fantastic tip. We're going to take another quick break and be right back with Dr. Aric Prather. The book is called The Sleep Prescription. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and we are continuing our discussion with Dr. Aric Prather, author of The Sleep Prescription, about ways to get a great night's sleep every night. And one of the tips that you provide is to pay attention to what you do during the day, and we're talking about exercise.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to think of this book as really focusing on the idea that, sleep doesn't, ensuring that you have a good night's sleep doesn't start when you get into bed. It starts when you wake up, right? And there's so many things we can do throughout the day that will help put us in the best position for sleep. And so exercise is absolutely one of them. I mean, I think, it goes alongside all of the other important health behaviors that kind of support our well-being and our longevity. And exercise can be really effective both when we're feeling, having low energy. It can kind of be alerting and kind of get us through those doldrums during the day. But also, we know of things that people can do. Exercise actually can help enhance our deep sleep, right? That restorative sleep. And so, the data is still emerging on this, but it seems to be something that people can do that to help enhance that. But I mean, there are some caveats. You certainly want to make sure that you don't do it too close to bedtime. For some people, that can be too alerting and then make it difficult to fall asleep or stay asleep because it activates your sympathetic nervous system, and that needs to come down so that you can sleep deeply. But it is absolutely something that is important for health generally, but also seems to help with sleep.
Another tip is to cut out substances, and you pay attention to caffeine and alcohol, which a lot of people think, wait a second, I thought alcohol made you sleep better.
Yeah. I mean, alcohol absolutely helps people fall asleep. That, it's very soporific. There's a reason why, so many of us have nightcaps, but it actually, of course, affects your brain and can really change the sleep architecture that people have. So kind of the things that make up our sleep. In particular, what happens is it suppresses what's called rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep. That's that dreaming sleep that we have. It suppresses it. And what that means is you get this big dose of deep sleep right at the beginning of the night. And because you get that, you kind of drain out some of your sleep. Your sleep becomes more fragmented in the second half of the night. And you get this REM rebound. And what ultimately happens is that people have kind of less restorative, kind of more fragmented, tossing and turning experiences in sleep. And then they ultimately don't feel as good in the morning. The other thing that alcohol does is it's relaxing, right? It hits on those receptors in our brain that make us feel relaxed, but it wears off. And when it wears off, your brain notices. And that also leads to more awakening. You mentioned caffeine. Caffeine is probably the most consistent drug that's used in the U.S. And it's helpful for alertness, but it has a half-life of 6 hours. That means it takes 6 hours in your system to be down to half its dose. So if you drink, say, a double espresso at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, at 10 p.m., you still have that single espresso in your system. And as you might imagine, that certainly can make it difficult for people to fall asleep. And we know that it also makes sometimes people sleep lighter.
And then you say another great tip is to have a cool room, dark, obviously, but about 65 degrees quickly.
Yeah, it absolutely is important for helping your body cool down. Your core body temperature drops during the night. And so the cooler it is, 65 degrees, as you mentioned, seems to be kind of the nice sweet spot so that people can sleep deeply and well.
All right, that's good news, especially because heating costs are going to be really high this winter. So keep your bedroom cool in the middle of the night. We're going to take a final break and be right back with Dr. Aric Prather talking about how to get a good night's sleep. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Aric Prather, author of The Sleep Prescription. And you say one thing to really watch out for, believe it or not, are these sleep medications. This can be sort of surprising to a lot of people.
Yeah, sleep medications, are helpful in kind of short doses for acute problems. They can help people fall asleep, but even if many of them are not physiologically addicting, they become almost immediately psychologically addicting, right? We start to wonder, can we sleep without these? And so it's a slippery slope to go down. Certainly, some medications can also have kind of side effects that can be challenging. They can, increase fall risks, things like that. And so it's something to try to not use regularly. Chronic use certainly has been associated with kind of negative health problems down the line. And, the tips that we include in this book, or, if you meet a sleep provider, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is the first line treatment and is what should be used before people start on sleep medications. The tips in this book are kind of distill a lot of those principles for people, so that the book is a good place to get started. And so if you can, hold off from using the sleep medications, your health and well-being will be better for it.
Unfortunately, Dr. Prather, we are out of time. I just wanted to say that there are just so many wonderful nuggets, such great practical tips in the book. Once again, it's called The Sleep Prescription, 7 Days to Unlocking Your Best Rest. Tell folks where they can find the book and also find out more about you.
Yeah, the book is available everywhere starting November 1st. Any bookstore, online, Amazon, Target, whatever. So yeah, definitely pick it up. More about me. I'm at the University of California, San Francisco. I have a website. It's ericprather.com. And that'll link you to all the work that we do. We do a lot of research that we didn't get to talk about today. But anybody interested can reach out.
All right. Well, thank you once again for joining us today and for your fantastic work. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And thanks to you for tuning in to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. We'll see you again next week.